I want to look now at definite articles in the nominative and accusative cases. Now, this presentation is going to build on two prior presentations, specifically our prior discussions of the nominative case and the accusative case. And I hope you have a firm or a fairly good grip on these concepts. This presentation is going to focus on how these concepts, that is nominative and accusative, how they play out in German grammar, specifically how they are reflected in the definite articles. What I'm going to do here is go through a quick review of German nouns. I think this is important. It'll build on our later discussions. Look at definite articles and then end the presentation with some examples. So by way of review, you'll recall that the German noun manifests gender. That is, a German noun is either masculine, feminine, or neuter. And that this gender is reflected in definite articles. That is, a German noun could either be preceded by a definite article of der, die, or das, depending upon the gender of the noun. Now, you'll also recall that a German noun could either be singular or plural. Now, if a German noun is singular, the definite article that precedes it will be der, die, or das. If a German noun is plural, it'll only be preceded by the definite article die. So, a German noun, if it's a singular noun, will show whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter. Will show its gender, whereas a German noun, if it's plural, will only show that it is plural and will not manifest gender. That is, it'll only be preceded by a definite article die. Now, in the nominative case, these are the definite articles you see on the screen. We have der, die, das, and plural die. You recall that the nominative case is the case we use to talk about the subject of the sentence, the primary actor, the thing, the idea, the person, the object around which or whom the whole sentence revolves. Now, you'll also recall that the accusative case, we use this case to indicate who receives the action, who receives directly the action of the subject of the sentence. And that the definite articles will, for the most part, stay the same. If it's a feminine definite article, die, it'll stay die. If it's a plural definite article, die, it'll also remain die. However, the only thing that changes, and the one thing that we're going to really have to focus on, is if it's a masculine noun preceded by a definite article. In the nominative case, it would be der. However, as this noun assumes or shifts over, changes into an accusative environment, this shift has to be reflected in the gender. Has to be reflected in the grammar. And so der will change to den. So I sort of think of it as being the Oklahoma box. Now, everything inside of the Oklahoma box, like you see on your screen, what I've marked in blue, are things that don't change. So if it's a feminine definite article, a neuter definite article, plural definite article, it's the same in the nominative and the accusative cases. However, the only thing outside of the Oklahoma box is den. So as a masculine noun with a definite article, as it moves to a accusative environment, this movement will be reflected in a change in the definite article. Der will change to den. So what follows, I'm going to look at some specific examples of movement from the nominative case into the accusative case. The first one I want to look at uses a feminine noun. And you'll recall, and I have an excerpt of the chart, with the Oklahoma chart, at the top of the screen. Now you'll recall that the nominative definite article and the accusative definite article for a feminine singular noun remains the same. So it's always D. So we don't really have to worry about changing things. But we do need to know that we need to be cognizant and aware that we have a change in environment. The sentence you see on your screen is totally in the nominative. Das ist die Lampe. That is the lamp. Now, the first thing that we want to do is look for the subject of the sentence. What are we talking about? Is there a primary actor? And we'd say, well, yes, that is die Lampe. We're talking about the lamp. Now, the next thing we have to do is ask ourselves, well, what is the lamp doing? Do I need to be worried about an accusative case? Now, we look at the verb ist, which is a third-person singular verb of sein. And sein is just simply a verb expressing condition or being. And so when we talk about condition or being or change of condition or being, by default, most of the time, we'll be using nominative case. So, das ist die Lampe. Die Lampe, subject of the sentence, nominative case. Therefore, we have a nominative definite article. Now let's take this lamp, move it now into an accusative environment. So you see on the screen, the chart has remained the same, but what I've done is I've introduced another actor. So we ask ourselves, who is the primary actor in the sentence? We have a choice of two nouns there. We have or is actually a pronoun, he, and we have die Lampe, which is the lamp again. So who is doing something in the sentence? Well, we look and we see hat, he has. So the primary actor, the primary agent in this sentence is He's the person who's doing something. Now, since he's the primary actor in the sentence, he's going to be in the nominative case. So he has. Well, what does he have? He has the lamp. So the lamp receives the action of being had by the subject, So the lamp is moved over into an accusative environment. It receives the action of being had. So even though the definite article D stays the same, it expresses a different concept. It's expressing the accusative case. Now let's look at something that really shows this change from a nominative accusative quite clearly, and that is, of course, the masculine noun, or the masculine case. Anyway, what I have here on the screen is a example of a masculine noun used in a nominative environment. Das ist der Tisch. So again, same step, the same process. What's the subject of the sentence? Who's the primary actor? Who are we talking? Who or what are we talking about? I'd say, well, the table. The table is the primary focus in the sentence. So, well, what is the table doing? Ist. It's not doing anything, really. It's just existing. So, therefore, since we have a verb of being or condition or change of being and condition, this whole sentence is going to be in the nominative case. The subject of the sentence, der Tisch, is going to reflect this state of being in the nominative case by having a definite article in the nominative case, der. All right, now let's take this table and move it into an accusative environment. Now I've introduced another actor into the sentence again, he. Now this actor is doing something he has. That indicates that, well, he's the primary actor in the sentence, the primary agent. He's going to be the nominative case. So will be nominative. we have a third-person singular verb, hat, which agrees, subject-verb agreement. So, well, what does he have? Something has to be had by him. Something has to receive the action of being had. And that's the table. Hat den Tisch. Now, since the table it receives the action of being had by the subject of the sentence, and since this table just happens to be a singular masculine noun, which we use the definite article der, this is the one instance where the definite article changes from der to den. So hat den Tisch. So to show that this singular masculine noun Tisch is being had, it's being possessed, being occupied by the subject of the sentence, it has to show this state of being an accusative object. So, quickly, as a way for recap, a way for review, most definite articles stay the same in the nominative and the accusative cases. If it's a feminine noun, if it's a feminine definite article, if it's a neuter definite article, if it's a plural definite article, all of those stay the same. The only thing that we really need to focus on are the singular masculine noun, the definite article der. Der will change to den. All right, we're going to take a look today at the imperative in German. As usual, we're going to begin our discussion of the topic by first looking at the same or analogous verb form in English, looking at the imperative in English before we move over to into a discussion of the topic in German. We're going to see that whereas English has only one form of the imperative, German actually has three. And then we're going to take a look at some of the nuances of how to form the imperative in German. So, beginning first with an examination of English, the imperative in English. We look at a simple English statement. I say it's a statement in the sense that I'm stating a fact. I'm not commanding anything. I'm not raising a question. So you take the car. We have the subject in the first position, the verb take, second position, followed by the direct object. Now, when I want to make a command, when I want to form an imperative in English, what I do is I drop off the subject, as we'll see in this slide right here. I drop off the subject you, and I start the sentence off with the verb, take the car. Now, we'll do sort of the same thing in German. Normally in German, 2 out of the 3 times, we will, all of the times, we will start the imperative sentence, the command, with the verb. So in this way, German is very similar to English. However, that's sort of where the similarities break down. Now, when I say this sentence, take the car in English, I could be referring to my best friend, my roommate, someone who is an authority figure, or I could be referring to a group of people. 3 different situations, I use the same statement, or same command, take the car. German, however, is going to distinguish those 3 different situations. And essentially, we're going to find out that German has 3 forms of the imperative. One, which is the formal form of the imperative, when I refer to a person in authority or a person that I want to show respect for. Whenever I'd use the pronoun sie, I will use a specific type of formal imperative. However, when I use an informal singular, for instance, your roommate, person that you know, you feel comfortable with, you use do. I'll use a different type of command form. And finally, when I refer to a group of people, I will use the informal plural form. So 3 different forms. So let's look at the most simplest one first, and that's actually going to be the formal. So again, we'll start off with a formal statement, and which is based on the English sentence that we looked at the beginning of this presentation. take the car, or you take the car. Sie nehmen das Auto. You take the car. Subject, verb, and the direct object. Now notice that the verb is in the infinitive form. Actually, it's the formal form that agrees with the subject of the sentence. Sie. Sie nehmen das Auto. Now, when I want to make a command out of this, when I want to make it into imperative, I do essentially the same thing I did in English, which is I take the verb, put it at the very beginning of the sentence. However, I'm not going to drop the pronoun. Sie is going to remain there. And then I follow that up by the direct object. So essentially, the verb comes in the first position. The subject, the pronoun, comes in the second position. So the pronoun and the verb simply swap positions. And the direct object stays in the same place. Nehmen Sie das Auto. Now, so essentially, whenever I make a formal command, I'm just going to switch the pronoun and the verb stays in the exact same form, which is the infinitive form, nehmen. Now, let's look at the same sentence in a do, or informal command. Du nimmst das Auto. Again, subject first position, verb second position, and followed by the direct object third position. Now, nehmen, you'll recall, is a strong verb, so there's going to be a stem vowel change. Nehmen goes to nimmst. So, for instance, ich nehme, du nimmst, nimmt, and then wir nehmen. Back to normal again. So, du nimmst das Auto. You take the car. Now, if I want to make a command out of this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the verb at the beginning of the sentence in the first position. However, I'm going to drop out the subject. It's not important. I know I'm talking to you, I'm commanding you, it's understood, so this pronoun is going to be a little redundant. So let's take a look at that slide. So, nimm das Auto. So, essentially, when we make a informal command, what we're going to do is we're going to put the verb in the first position. We're going to drop out the pronoun entirely, just like we do in English, and follow it up by the direct object. Now, if there is any type of stem vowel change in the verb, we're going to keep that stem vowel change. If there isn't, then we don't have to worry about it. But what we want to do is we're going to remove any extra endings on the verbs. If you recall from the prior slide, it was du nimmst. Well, I'm just going to drop the st off and keep the stem vowel change nimm, and then follow up by the direct object, nimm das Auto. Now, nehmen doesn't have umlauts. Certain verbs, of course, do. So let's sort of modify the sentence we've been playing with. Instead of taking the car, we're going to drive the car. Du fährst das Auto. Again, subject, verb, direct object in the accusative case. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to drop out the subject, remove the personal pronoun du. I'm going to take fährst, kick it to the beginning of the sentence in the first position, and follow it up by the direct object, das Auto. However, what you're going to see is that I've actually removed the umlauts. I've removed the st ending, but also the umlauts. So instead of fahr das Auto, it's simply fahr das Auto. So whenever I use a verb that takes umlauts, has a stem vowel change that takes umlauts, and I want to make a command out of it, I'm going to drop the pronoun, I'm going to put the verb at the beginning of the sentence in the second person form, drop the st ending off, and also the umlauts. Fairly simple. Now, finally, the third form is going to be the informal for plural. So if you're referring to a group of people that are your friends. The regular sentence, the statement, is Ihr fahrt das Auto. Y'all drive the car. Essentially, again, sort of the same thing that we did in the prior two examples, or prior three examples, we're going to do here. fahrt das Auto. I drop out the personal pronoun. The verb comes in the first position. However, I'm going to keep the exact same form. It's going to be a second person plural form, and same thing with the imperative. It will essentially be a second person plural form followed by the direct object, fahrt das Auto. Now, I've occasionally also seen fahrt ihr das Auto. They still retain the personal pronoun, but that usually only happens in the informal plural. No other place would you retain the pronoun. So, to summarize, 3 different types of ways to form commands or imperatives in German. We have the formal, the informal singular, and the informal plural. The formal is the easiest one. We simply swap the pronoun and the verb. So verb comes first position, pronoun comes second. We have the informal singular, and that will require us to know, is there a stem vowel change? Do I need to drop umlauts? In any case, we're going to be dropping the personal pronoun. And then finally, we have the informal plural, which we look at right here on the screen, and that is essentially keeping the same verb form and putting it in the first position and dropping the pronoun, the subject of the sentence. All right, German imperative verbs. Today we're going to be looking at dative prepositions. And as usual, I'm going to begin the presentation with an example sentence in English. Specifically, what I'm going to be looking at in this sentence, the English sentence, is the equivalent of a dative prepositional phrase. Now, in English, I don't think that this particular preposition, which is with, is a dative preposition, but it's going to be the example we're going to be using in the following German sentences, so we're going to start there. Then I'm going to go through and analyze a German sentence with a dative prepositional phrase, show you how it's put together, throw 2 examples in. One will be a masculine noun, the other one will be a feminine noun, and show you how the dative preposition changes the definite article, or in this case the possessive adjective. Finally, we're going to look at a list of dative prepositions, and I'll go through and sort of give the nuances of each preposition. Prepositions are perhaps the most difficult part of any language. There's a lot of extra baggage that comes along with prepositions, meanings, nuances, that only comes with lots of practice. So I'll kind of go through those and give you a heads up on that. So let's look right now at the English sentence. I travel with my mother. Now, the English sentence has a subject, first person singular, personal pronoun, I, and this is the nominative case. This is the subject of the sentence, the one who is the person that's doing all of the action. And what is that action? Traveling. It's a first person singular verb, I travel. Now, what we have here with my mother is what we call a prepositional phrase. It tells you the manner in which I travel. What's interesting here is that with the preposition, with my mother, it doesn't change the word my at all. I could say I see my mother, I kiss my mother, that is my mother. That is my mother, that would be a nominative construction. I see my mother, I kiss my mother, that would be an accusative construction. In all those instances, my mother remains unchanged. That's not the case in German. In German, when we throw a noun into a dative prepositional phrase, it's going to change the endings. It's going to change the definite articles. So let's take a look at that. Same sentence, but in German. Ich fahre mit meiner Mutter. We have the subject of the sentence, a first person singular personal pronoun, ich, the nominative case. This is the thing, the person is doing everything in the sentence, the main actor, the subject. And what is this person doing? Ich fahre. First person singular verb, subject verb agreement. Now, this is where things get interesting. We have the dative preposition mit, with, And what follows that is going to be a dative prepositional phrase. So, mit meiner Mutter. Now you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute. I thought it's meine Mutter, feminine. For instance, ich fahre mit should be meine Mutter. However, whenever you drop, in this instance, a feminine noun into a dative prepositional phrase, the prepositional phrase is everything that comes between the dative preposition mit and the very end of the sentence, the period, or actually the noun that immediately follows. That's all going to be thrown into the dative case. So in this instance, I simply have one word, meine, and that changes from meine to meiner Mutter. Now I have one word here, but I could also have 100 words. Everything that comes between the dative preposition and the noun that immediately follows that preposition, even if there is 1 or 100 words in between that, that is all going to be part of the dative prepositional phrase, and is going to be in the dative case. So meine, which is a possessive adjective, changes from a nominative meine to a dative meiner. Now let's take a look at another example, which would be masculine, mein Vater. In the nominative, mein doesn't take an ending. It's a nominative masculine, so it's simply mein Vater. However, when I take mein Vater and drop it into a dative prepositional phrase, which follows mit, it's going to change from mein to meinem Vater. Ich fahre mit meinem Vater. So the thing that we have to be aware of is we first have to know what the dative prepositions are, and I'll get to that in just a second. But we also have to be aware of the concept of this dative prepositional phrase. We looked at this prior with accusative prepositional phrases, so this is sort of the same concept, except instead of taking an accusative object, dative prepositions are going to take a dative object. So anytime you drop in a noun into a dative prepositional phrase, that all has to change into dative. Now, what are the dative prepositions? I have a list here on the screen. I'm going to go through these one by one. The first one is aus, and there's actually sort of a jingle. It's the one I learned when I was learning German. It's based on, I think, Strauss's Blue Danube. It goes aus, außer, bei, mit, von, seit, nach, zu, gegenüber. Gegenüber being the one that doesn't really fit into the rhyme, so it comes at the end. Aus means from, out of, or made of. So, for instance, er kommt aus dem Haus. He's coming out of the house. He's leaving the house. He's exiting the house. Now, I could also say, der Tisch ist aus Holz. The table is made of wood. In this instance, to express the concept made of, I would use the dative preposition aus. The next one, außer, means except or beside. Alle kommen außer Petra. Everyone is coming with the exception of except Petra. She's not coming. Now, bei means near, at, for, or with. So er wohnt bei seinem Großvater. He's living with his, or at the residence of his grandfather. Er steht bei mir. He's standing by me. So it could either be a physical concept, that someone is physically standing next to me, or it could also imply that he's residing at a place, at a certain address with a person. Mit, with, which we saw before, or by means of. So for the prior example, I'm traveling with my mother. This one right here, er fährt mit seinem Fahrrad. He's traveling by means or with his bicycle. Von. Der Brief ist von Hans, is from Hans. The letter is from Hans. Let's see, we could also say das Buch ist von mir geschrieben worden, which is a little more complex. But what I'm saying is the book was written by me. Seit, since. Wohnt seit 8 Jahren in Deutschland. He's been living for 8 years, or since 8 years, for the space of 8 years in Germany. Seit is interesting. It implies that there's a specific point in time in the past, and from that specific point in time in the past up to the present moment, I've been doing something continuously without interruption. Ich spiele die Gitarre seit 8 Jahren. I play the guitar. I've been playing the guitar for 8 years. Nach means to or after. Fährt nach München. He's going to Munich. He's traveling to Munich. Kommt nach mir. He's coming after me. So when you're traveling to a distant location, a city, a big place, a city or a country, you would use nach. However, the next preposition, zu, which also means to, at, or for, you would use that if you're traveling to a place inside of a city. For example, fährt zum Supermarkt. He's traveling to the supermarket. Ich bin zu Hause. I am at home. And then finally we have gegenüber, which means sort of across from, opposite, kitty corner from, for example, die Bank liegt dem Bahnhof gegenüber. The bank is across the street or a kitty corner from the train station. Now gegenüber is interesting because all of the other prepositions come before the object. However, gegenüber traditionally or tends to come after the dative object. So die Bank, which would be the subject, nominative, liegt or is positioned or lays. Then suddenly, without any type of preposition, we dive immediately into the dative, dem Bahnhof, and before we could ask ourselves why that's dative, we get the answer gegenüber, the dative preposition across from. So, dative prepositions. Let's take a few moments to get to know the nominative case a little bit better. What I want to do right now is to look first at the nominative case in English, and then from there go over to a discussion of the nominative case in German. Essentially, they're the same thing. So, let's look at the sentence you see on your screen. I am tired. And let's take the sentence apart a little bit. We have the first person singular personal pronoun, which is in the nominative case. I, the subject of the sentence, the person who performs the action in the sentence, the person of primary interest in the sentence, the person who pulls all the strings in the sentence. This person, the subject, is in the nominative case. Now, this person exists, is doing something. So that brings us to the next word in the sentence, the verb am, which is a first person singular verb, a conjugation form of to be. I am. Now, if I left it just as that, it would be a complete sentence. I am. Not very interesting, but nevertheless a sentence. What I want to do is I want to expand the sentence out a little bit, provide a little bit more information. And I'm going to do that by adding a predicate adjective. I am tired. I'm reporting on my condition. So if you want to look at it in a most basic form, what you're saying is I equal tired. I am tired. I'm reporting on my condition. Now, nominative case can report on people's conditions. It's also the primary actor, the person who performs the action in a sentence. But we could also talk about change of condition. So, I become tired. Or we could even talk about a lack of changing condition. So, I remain tired. All of these sentences, we have a subject, in the nominative case, which again is the primary actor in the sentence, the person around whom the sentence hinges, the reason for me talking about this person, the person who pulls all the strings, the actor. We have different verbs, am, become, and remain, and then we have the same predicate adjective, tired. But essentially what we're talking about is the condition, a changing condition, the condition that remains the same. This is, in a nutshell, the nominative case. Now let's take a look at the same sentences in German. We have a first person singular personal pronoun, ich, again, in the nominative case. Now, we also have the verb, ich bin, first person singular verb. So we have subject-verb agreement. Again, I could just leave it at that. Ich bin, I am. That's kind of a boring sentence. So I want to expand it again by tacking on a predicate adjective. Ich bin müde. I am tired. So I'm reporting on my condition. I am the primary actor in the sentence. I am the person of primary interest. I'm the reason why the sentence exists. I am in the nominative case. All right? Now I'm reporting on a condition, so essentially what I'm saying is I equal tired, ich müde, but we could also look at change of condition as well. Ich bin müde, I am tired. Ich werde müde, I become tired. Or, like we talked about before in looking at the English sentence, ich bleibe müde, I remain tired. In all these instances, the nominative case, the ich, the subject of the sentence, is in the nominative case. Why? Because ich is the primary actor. It's the person who would perform the action in a sentence if there were action here, but is the person around whom the sentence hinges. It's the primary person of interest, the person whose condition we are reporting. All of the verbs show condition or change of condition, which is another hint that it's going to be a nominative case. And then finally, we have a predicate adjective at the end of the sentence, which sort of wraps out, fleshes out the sentences and says, well, this person is tired. This person becomes tired. This person remains tired. Nominative case. A few moments to get to know the German noun a bit better. The German noun has gender. That is, it's either masculine, feminine, or neuter. As we'll see in a few moments, the gender of a German noun isn't necessarily the same as the gender of the object in reality. Now, the gender of a noun is indicated by the definite article. So, for instance, a masculine noun will be preceded by der. A feminine noun could be preceded by die. A neuter noun could be preceded by das. In addition to gender, a German noun will indicate number. A German noun is either singular or it is plural. So, let's look a little bit closer at this. A German noun, if it is singular, will either be masculine, feminine, or neuter. It can be preceded by the definite article der, die, or das. If a German noun is plural, it will only indicate the number. It will not indicate the gender. Therefore, it will only be preceded by the definite article die. Now this concept is sort of familiar to us as English speakers. Let's look at the combination the man. It's preceded, the noun, it's a singular noun, is preceded by the definite article the. Now, and that's sort of where the similarities break down. If we look at English, it doesn't tell us much about the quality of the noun. It doesn't indicate whether the noun is singular or plural. It doesn't indicate whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter. We assume, since we're speaking about the man, that it's going to be a masculine noun. German, however, tells us a little bit more information about the quality of the noun. So we have the definite article, der. We know that from our prior discussion that der indicates the masculine gender of the noun. Now, since it's der Mann, we also know it's going to be singular. So it's a masculine singular noun. Same thing with die Frau, or the woman. Definite article tells us that the noun that follows after it will be a feminine singular noun. Now, das Auto, or the car, is the same thing. The definite article indicates that the noun following it will be a neuter singular noun. Now, the problem here that maybe you sort of see already is, well, how do I know if a noun is going to be masculine, feminine, or neuter? And sometimes it's easy for us to assume that, or it makes sense. For instance, this example, der Mann. Now, we're talking about a man, and logically, the man is going to be male. And in this sense, German supports us in our assumption. Definite article is a masculine singular, indicates that the noun that follows it is going to be masculine singular. And indeed, it's a male that we're talking about, so that makes sense. Now, the same thing with die Frau. The definite article indicates that the noun that's going to be following it is going to be a feminine singular noun. And indeed it works out that way. We're talking about a female, and it makes sense that the noun that indicates this woman is going to be a feminine singular noun. However, this way of thinking, sort of drawing tight one-to-one connections between the language and reality, don't always work out. So for instance, let's take a look at the next noun, das Mädchen, the little girl. Now, we know from our experience in reality that little girls are going to be female. However, in the German language, the noun that describes this little girl is going to be neuter singular, das Mädchen. So there isn't a one-to-one comparison between the language system and the reality that this language system describes. So this tells us, or suggests to us, that when we learn German vocabulary, not only do we need to know the word, the noun, memorize that, but we also need to know the definite article, or we need to know whether this noun is masculine, feminine, or neuter. We need to memorize that in addition to the noun that we memorize. This is very, very, very important for later uses of the language, especially adjective endings. So, sometimes it makes sense. There'll be a connection between the reality and the language system. Sometimes there won't be. German won't always help us out. However, there are a few tricks that we can employ. So if we have a noun that ends in IN, that will automatically change the noun to a feminine. So der Student, the student, which would be a masculine singular, if we add an IN ending onto it, it will change it to a feminine singular, die Studenten. Now, same thing with UNG endings. If we ever have any noun, if you ever see a noun that has UNG ending, this noun will always be feminine singular. Same thing with nouns that end in heit or keit. Die Krankheit, the illness. This will always be a feminine singular noun. So, now another thing that we need to know about German nouns is that a lot of times large nouns are composed out of smaller individual nouns. So these larger nouns, these compound nouns, what gender are they? And what we need to look at is when we have these large German nouns, we need to take them apart, separate them, and isolate the last noun in this compound noun. And that noun will be, the gender of that noun will be the gender for the whole larger compound noun. So let's look at das Bier, the beer, neuter singular, and der Garten, garden, masculine singular. Now, we want to put these two nouns together to make Biergarten, a place where people go in the summer to drink beer in the evenings and talk with friends. So we have a neuter singular noun and a masculine singular noun. So the last component in this compound noun will be der Garten, which means that this place where we go to drink beer in the summer would be a masculine singular noun, der Biergarten. I want to take a few moments now to look at German syntax. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, what is syntax? And it's actually derived from the ancient Greek. Syn and taxis, together arrangement, an arranging together of components in a sentence. So what that really means in modern English is word order. How are words, how are verbs, adjectives, how are all of these things arranged in a sentence so that it sounds correct? This is something that we do in English all the time. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, in English it's rather transparent. We grow up speaking English, most of us have, and we just do it naturally. It sounds good to us. The problem is when we learn a foreign language, well, how do we put our expressions, our verbs, our vocabulary, all that together in a way that it sounds authentically German? Let's take a look at English syntax briefly, because English is also a Germanic language, and many of the aspects of English syntax can be applied to German. Not all of them, but it'll give us a good start. So let's look at the sentence on the screen for it at the moment. We will drive this evening in my car to Berlin. So let's take the sentence apart, starting at the left side of the screen and moving towards the right. We have we as the subject of the sentence. It's a first person plural personal pronoun. It's also the subject of the sentence. It's the part of the sentence that is performing the action. And well, what is the action? What are they going to do? They will drive. It's a future tense verb. In English we have to use the to, will drive. But it's a first person plural verb. Now this is where it gets a little interesting after the subject and the verb. We have this adverbial clause, the third component of the sentence. This is a rather large section of the sentence, and it's a large chunk that can be broken down into further subcomponents. So let's take a look at this adverbial clause, this evening in my car to Berlin. So the first part is, we notice, is well, when? When will you be driving? That's the time component of the adverbial clause. Well, this evening. All right, so the time, and then after that we have the manner. Well, in what manner will you be driving to Berlin this evening? Well, the manner in which I will be driving will be in my car. So we have, so far, the time component and the manner component in this adverbial clause. Now finally, well, where are you going? Place. I'm going to Berlin. So in this adverbial clause we have essentially three components: time, manner, and place. Now let's look at the same thing that we have, the same sentence translated into German. Wir, first person plural personal pronoun, subject of the sentence, the actor, the primary agent performing the action. So what is this person doing? Fahren, first person plural verb, second component in the sentence. So far the same thing that we had in English. Wir fahren, we will drive. Now let's look at the third part, the third component of this sentence. Heute Abend in meinem Auto nach Berlin. All right, another huge adverbial clause, the third component of the sentence. The first component is the subject, the second component is the verb, third component is the adverbial clause. So let's take this a little bit apart. We have the time. When will you be driving to Berlin? Heute Abend, this evening. All right. We also have the manner in which it will be done. In meinem Auto, in my car. And then finally, we have nach Berlin, to Berlin. So essentially what we have in German and in English, roughly, is a time, manner, place. In English, this is just for review, a syntax comparison. We will drive this evening in my car to Berlin. Time, manner, place. We also have components 1, 2, and 3. Subject, verb, and adverbial clause. Now, putting up the German right next to the English, we essentially have almost the same thing. Wir fahren heute Abend in meinem Auto nach Berlin. We, wir, first person, the first component in the sentence, fahren, the verb, and then we have heute Abend in meinem Auto nach Berlin. Again, time, manner, place. So this is a very important thing to note right now. When we are making sentences in German, generally the sort of standard default is time, manner, place. Wir fahren, all right? What time are we driving? How are we getting there? Where are we going? Time, manner, place. Now, this is where it becomes a little more complicated. But there's a method to the madness. Let's take a closer look at the adverbial clause. Heute Abend in meinem Auto nach Berlin. So, what German lets us do is emphasize in the sentence what is most important by placing that in the first position. So, let's take a look at the sentence that we've been playing with up to this point. Wir fahren heute Abend in meinem Auto nach Berlin. So we have these different columns, 1, 2, and 3. The first position is wir, the subject. What are we doing? We are driving. Second position, fahren. And then the third position, we have the adverbial phrase, time, manner, place. Now, what this emphasizes is by placing this at the very beginning of the sentence, that's where the attention is. By the time I get to the end of the sentence, my attention is maybe elsewhere. A lot of these German sentences are long, and, well, you know, my attention span just isn't that long. So in German, what we want to do is we place all of that most important stuff at the beginning of the sentence. So here it's wir. But what if I want to emphasize something totally different? Heute Abend fahren wir in meinem Auto nach Berlin. Now, I can do this in German. German allows me to say, well, it's not the fact that we are traveling to Berlin that's most important, but the fact that heute Abend, this evening, is the most important. Not tomorrow evening, not yesterday evening, this evening. You need to get there on time. So this evening is most important. I can take that at the beginning of the sentence. So, you'll see that the time component of the adverbial clause gets shifted towards the front. It essentially swaps places with the subject of the sentence, wir, but the manner and the place stays the same. In English, that would sound odd. This evening, travel we in my car to Berlin. Sounds odd in English. In German, they do it all the time. Now, the other thing is, well, let's say it's not the time that's important, but instead it is the manner. So I could do the same thing. In meinem Auto fahren wir heute nach Berlin. So the time component of the adverbial phrase gets pushed back into the adverbial phrase, adverbial clause, and the manner component gets put at the first part of the sentence, the first slot, the first component. In meinem Auto fahren wir heute nach Berlin. Now, what if someone says, are you traveling to München? Are you traveling to Munich? You're like, no, I'm traveling to Berlin. So I could emphasize the place. Nach Berlin fahren wir heute Abend in meinem Auto. So the place component of the adverbial clause gets put towards the beginning of the sentence in the first position, and the manner gets pushed back into the adverbial clause. So I think here we can see a pattern. The pattern is I could put a subject or any component of the adverbial clause in the first position. German lets me do that. I won't sound stilted and funny. However, if it's a statement, the verb, the verb by default will always come in the second position. Always there, if it's a statement. Now, if I switch out the subject of the sentence with another component of the adverbial phrase, I need to put the subject directly after the verb. I want to get the subject as close to the verb as I can. Either it comes before it in the first position, or it comes at the very beginning of the third position. In any case, I want to get that as close to the verb as possible. The verb always stays in the second position if it's a statement, not a question if it's a statement. And then finally, I could put whatever I want in the first position depending upon what I personally want to emphasize. Alright, today I want to take a look at modal verbs. As usual, I'm going to begin our discussion of modal verbs with an example in English before transitioning over to an example in German. The main point I want to stress is that regular verbs simply report an action, whereas modal verbs add something extra to the whole equation. It reports on an attitude, ability, or a characteristic of the verb itself, of the action. So we're going to be talking about that today, and then we're going to look at actually how to insert a modal verb into a German sentence. This will require knowledge of the sentence bracket in German. Before closing with a look at all the modal verbs, their meanings, and then also a subjunctive form of one of those modal verbs. We use that subjunctive form, möchten, quite a bit to express what we would like. So without further ado, let's take a look at modal verbs. So we have on the screen a simple sentence in English. He sleeps in the bed. Now, with the verb here, sleeps, it simply reports the action of the subject. It doesn't explain whether he likes to sleep in the bed, whether he ought to sleep in her bed, or even if he should sleep in the bed. It simply reports the action of the subject, he sleeping in the bed. Now, by itself, that's kind of a boring sentence. It tells me what I need to know, but in life we want to know a lot more detail. So this is where modal verbs come in. Modal verbs report on an attitude, an ability, or responsibility towards the verb. So he should sleep in the bed. Doesn't mean that he is sleeping in the bed right now, but it means that sometime he should perhaps stop sleeping on the floor and move over to the bed where it's more comfortable. So it reports, this specific use of the modal verb reports perhaps a responsibility, an indebtedness, or a requirement to sleep in the bed. Now, the same thing we can do in German. We had the same sentence, schläft im Bett, he's sleeping in the bed. Now, again, it reports the same detail, or lack of detail. It simply reports the action. By itself, maybe a little boring, but if I want to imply this need, this ought to, I'm going to have to use a modal verb. Now, when we use a modal verb in German, it requires us to tweak the German syntax or the word order a bit. And this gets into your knowledge or prior knowledge of sentence bracketing. So, schläft im Bett goes to, well, we haven't got there quite yet, but what I want to do is I want to take schlafen or schläft, and I want to take it out of its second position, right behind the subject. And I want to take that and move it to the very end of the sentence and put schläft into its infinitive form, schlafen. Now this leaves a gap in the sort of middle or second position of the sentence, and I want to fill that gap with the modal verb. So I want to drop sollen in, and I want to conjugate it so there's subject-verb agreement. Third person singular form of the modal verb is soll. Soll im Bett schlafen. He ought to sleep in the bed, or he should sleep in the bed. Now, this is how we form modal or use modals in German. It takes the second position, and in so doing, it kicks the verb out of its position to the end of the sentence and turns it into its infinitive form, or the form that you would find in the dictionary. Soll schlafen. He should sleep. Now, we can do that with every single modal verb that there are, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Now, these are a list of the modal verbs, of all the modal verbs in German. Dürfen means I may, können means I can, mögen means I like, müssen means I must, soll I ought to, and wollen I want to. Now you'll notice that with the modal verbs, in the first, second, and third person singular, or ich, du, sie, es, there is a stem change in the vowel of the verb. So dürfen goes to darf. So ü, umlaut, goes to e. Same thing of können, mögen, müssen, and wollen. Sollen, however, remains the same. You'll also notice that ich darf and sie, es darf, well, essentially the first and third person forms, first and third person singular forms of the modal verb are the absolute same. So if you know how to conjugate ich, you also know how to conjugate sie, es. Now, these are all the modal verbs. They indicate, as I said, action, responsibility, attitude, a feeling towards a specific verb, a specific action. Now, the final thing I want to look at is the subjunctive form of the verb, of the modal verb mögen, I like. The subjunctive differs from the indicative. Indicative thus named because it indicates an action. Subjunctive, however, indicates a, how should we say it, a type of attitude or a possibility. For instance, ich mag, I like, ich möchte, I would like. Now, möchten, the subjunctive form of mögen, is used frequently when you want to be polite. If you want to order something. Ich möchte ein Bier. I would like to have a beer. Doesn't mean that I'm going to get it, but I would like to have it, and therefore I'm dependent upon your good graces to bring it to me. By using the subjunctive, you're sort of lowering yourself, putting yourself at another person's mercy, so to speak, and they will give this to you and thus be polite. So, anyway, these are the forms that we're going to be looking at right now. Later on, when we look at subjunctive, we'll figure out how to make subjunctive forms of the other modal verbs, and actually every verb there is in German. So, the modal verb. Let's take a few moments to get to know the accusative case a little bit better. What I want to do in this presentation is, like I've done in my other presentations, look at the concept of the accusative case first in English, and then I'm going to transition over to a discussion of the accusative case in German. Finally, what I want to do in this presentation is to look at the definite article and the personal pronoun in the accusative case. Now, this is something that I will address in more depth in other presentations, but what I want to do right now is just sort of prime the pump a bit, get you thinking about how the accusative case affects the grammar, affects the construction of the sentence a bit. Now, let's look at the sentence you see on your screen. I hit the chair. Now, let's take it apart. We have the subject of the sentence, the person who is performing the action, the person of primary interest, the main actor. The reason why I am even talking, or producing this sentence, is to tell a little bit more about this actor. This actor, which is a first-person singular personal pronoun, is in the nominative case. Again, this is the person, the thing, the object that is pulling all of the weight in the sentence. It's the main actor. So what is this main actor doing? Well, that brings us to the verb. First person singular verb of to hit. This person is hitting. Now, I could leave it just at that. I hit. It makes a complete sentence. I have a subject, I have a verb. But it begs the question, what am I hitting? And that question brings us to the accusative case, the chair. Now, it's a singular noun, but it's of interest, it's in the accusative case because this noun receives the action of being hit. It receives the action performed by the primary actor in the sentence. So, for review, we have I. I is in the nominative case. I is a first person singular personal pronoun. It's the subject of the sentence, the main actor. What is this main actor doing? Well, he's hitting. Well, that begs the question, what is being hit? The chair, which is the accusative case. Again, the accusative case receives the action performed by the primary actor in the sentence. So, let's move on to German. Same sentence in German. Ich schlage den Stuhl. Again, we have ich, a first person singular personal pronoun, in the nominative case, the primary actor in the sentence. What is this primary actor doing? Schlage, the first person singular verb form of schlagen. I hit. Again, begging the question, well, what is being hit? What receives the action performed by the primary actor in the sentence? And that would be den Stuhl, a masculine singular noun in the accusative case. Now, maybe you're wondering, well, Stuhl is masculine, and if I remember correctly, masculine is der, and you are correct. However, and this is why I want to broach this topic a little bit in this presentation. When we move certain nouns into the accusative case, this movement is reflected in the grammar. And der will go to den, as we'll see in a few seconds. So, ich schlage, like I mentioned before, it should be der Stuhl. Der is the nominative form. It's a masculine, singular noun, der Stuhl. However, as we have determined already in our discussion, der Stuhl is in the nominative case if it receives the action of being hit. It is required to be in the accusative case. So we can't stick a noun into the accusative case and have it remain nominative. So something has to change. And that is the definite article. So ich schlage, der Stuhl goes to den Stuhl. So der masculine noun, der, in the accusative case will go to den. That signals to us, the person who's looking at the sentence, that, okay, I have a subject. The subject is ich. Ich is in the nominative case. The subject, ich, the primary actor in the sentence, is doing something. He's hitting, schlagen. What is he hitting? Den Stuhl. Now I know that should be der Stuhl, but I see that's den, which signals to me, the reader of the sentence, that it's actually the accusative case. So, the chair, der Stuhl, which is now den Stuhl, receives the action of being hit. And I will get to that in like I mentioned before, in other later presentations. So, what's nice is that when we put a noun into a sentence, we have to be very cognizant of, is it masculine, feminine, neuter, or plural? And things may change based on the position in the sentence. If it's an accusative case, as we just saw here, der will go to den. What's nice to know is that for masculine, for definite articles, which are der, die, das, die, only the masculine changes in the accusative case. Der will go to den. As you see as you see here on your screen, the feminine stays the same, the neuter stays the same, and the plural stays the same. Now, another thing that we could also do, we've talked about nouns that change based on their position in the sentence, if it's in the accusative case. We can also change personal pronouns. In a prior presentation, we talked about the fact that in German we can switch out nouns with personal pronouns. So der Stuhl is a masculine noun. Therefore, we could substitute a masculine personal pronoun, However, as you see here, der Stuhl is in the nominative case. Similarly, the personal pronoun, is also in the nominative case, but I want to put it into the accusative case. The question is now, will it change? Yes, it does. Masculine pronoun, a masculine singular pronoun, if I put it into an accusative environment, an accusative situation, it will have to change to reflect its new role as an accusative object. So, ich, subject of the sentence, nominative case, the primary actor. What am I doing? I'm hitting something. Action in the sentence. So, question is, who receives the action that's performed? That brings us to the accusative case. Now, is he in the nominative case. I hit he. No, I have to change it, even in English. I hit him. Same thing in German. Ich schlage ihn. Ihn indicates that this person, a he, receives the action of being hit by the primary actor in the sentence, and that would be me. Again, accusative case. So, on your screen you have some personal pronouns. Mich, dich, ihn, sie, es. Those are all singular, accusative, personal pronouns. In the plural we have uns, euch, sie, sie. Again, this is something I'm going to look at in more depth in later presentations. The main point that I want to get across right now is that sometimes when we put a noun or a personal pronoun into an environment that requires the accusative case, and that could be receiving some type of action performed by the primary actor in the sentence, which is in the nominative case. This change will be reflected in a change of grammar, in a change of grammatical forms. So der goes to den, goes to ihn. First person singular, as you see on your screen, ich goes to mich. Accusative case. Okay, we're going to take a look at the dative case right now. Now, what I'm going to do with this short presentation is look specifically at the concept of the dative case. Other presentations are going to look more specifically at dative prepositions, personal pronouns, things of that nature, so the grammatical nuts and bolts. This one is just focusing on the concept of the dative. As usual, we're going to begin our presentation with an example in English of the dative case, how we form dative constructions in in English. And then we're going to look at the same sentence translated into German. The concept is the same, but we'll see that German has a more simplified, direct way of doing it. Whereas in English, we have to rely upon prepositions. So let's dive into the dative case first in English. What I want to do first is to begin with the accusative case. I have this very simple sentence on the screen right here. I give the book. Now I have a subject in the sentence. It's me. I'm in the nominative case, and I'm doing something. I'm doing an action. It's a verb, first person singular. Verb has we have a subject-verb agreement here. I'm giving. Now, what am I giving? Something receives the action of being given. And that, in this case, is the book. Now, the book is here the direct object. It is the object that is directly given. Therefore, it's going to be the accusative case. It receives the action of me giving it. Now, by itself, this sentence tells us a lot. We have a subject, have a verb, and the action of the verb as it is performed on the object. However, by itself, it's also kind of boring. I give the book. And it leaves a lot of questions unanswered. Well, to whom am I giving the book? Who receives the book after I'm done giving it? And this is actually where the dative case comes in. I give the book to my father. Now the first part of the sentence, I give the book, is exactly the same as we had in the prior slide. We have a subject, a verb, and we have the direct object in the accusative case. However, this sentence gives us some extra information. It tells who benefits from the action of me giving the book. To my father. Now, this is actually the dative case. It's the indirect object, the person who benefits from the action of me giving the book. Now, I'm not giving my father. That would make him the direct object in the accusative case. However, he receives the action. Now, in English, we have this whole phrase "to my father." We use the preposition "to" indicate the dative. We'll see in a second that this isn't the case in German. All right, well, with this in mind, let's look at the same sentence in German. Ich gebe das Buch. Let's break this down step by step. Subject, the nominative case, the person who's performing the action in the sentence, is ich, first person singular. Now, I have to be doing something, not just simply standing around, and I'm giving. Ich gebe. We have a verb, first person singular form of the verb, and that matches with the subject of the sentence, which is a first person singular personal pronoun, ich gebe, I give. Now again, this prompts the question, well, what am I giving? What receives the action of me giving it? And that would be das Buch. Again, this is a direct object, accusative case. It receives the action of me giving it. In other words, it's the noun that's directly influenced by the action of the verb. All right? So we have ich, subject, gebe, the verb, and das Buch, which would be direct object in the accusative case. Now, thinking back to this English sentence that we had, we need to give this book to someone. This makes the sentence more interesting, provides a little more information. So let's give it to my father again. Ich gebe meinem Vater das Buch. Now, you'll see that we have ich gebe. Again, it's the we have ich subject, gebe is the verb. Now we have between the verb and the direct object, das Buch, we have a dative masculine noun, meinem Vater. Notice that there's no preposition there. There is no to or zu. Instead, the whole, I can tell by the way the noun is, or the possessive adjective, meinem, the em ending on the end of this, indicates that this whole phrase, meinem Vater, is in the dative case. Again, it tells, reports, who benefits from the action of me giving the book. I give it to my father. Now, I could also replace meinem Vater with the third person singular dative personal pronoun ihm or him. I give him the book. In English we would say I give the book to him, but in German we say I give him the book. Nevertheless, it's still in dative. It's still the person who benefits from the action of me giving the book, and the book is given to him. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of word order. You'll notice that German puts the dative, in this instance, before the direct object. You also notice that the endings on the possessive adjectives, em is different than the ones that we've looked at before. I'm going to cover all of these grammar nuts and bolts, the details, in different presentations. The point I just want to drive home with this presentation is that the dative reports on who receives the action. Now, and this is in its most basic fundamental form, that is what the dative is. There are also other uses of dative. Some verbs, for instance, gefallen or helfen, to please or to help, automatically take a dative object. We'll get into these a little bit later. The main idea is that these verbs, gefallen and helfen, what you're actually doing, if you think about it, I give help to someone. I am pleasing to someone. So if you ever, if in German, if you could ever formulate the same sentence in English using to, chances are, a good chance that it's going to be, it's a dative. Now, certain prepositions, for example, aus, außer, bei, mit, automatically take a dative object. We've seen this with accusative prepositions, so there are also some dative prepositions that take a dative object. Now, we'll get into those later. The main thing is the dative answers the question to whom. Who benefits from the action? Who receives the object? The dative case.
Welcome to the German Professor YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. My name is David Neville, and I'm an Associate Professor of German. I have a PhD in German Language and Literature and an MS in Instructional Technology and Learning Sciences. The combination of these two degrees lets me do some really useful and cool stuff. I'm a big advocate of open educational resources. I think that knowledge should be available to everybody and that access to education should be as cheap as possible. Everything on this channel is available for you to use under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 4.0 International License. Some of the videos on this channel have materials you can download. In other videos will have links to online courses. In either case, the materials and courses are free for you to access and learn from. So what can you find here? I have a lot of instructional videos that explain German grammar. These are based on lectures that I give in my university classes, so they would be ideal for students of the German language to use. Instructors can also embed them in their courses. I'm creating videos and building an online course that teaches German within the context of basic business skills. University students and business professionals may find these materials helpful. I also use the channel as a way to showcase some of the work I'm doing in the area of digital game-based learning. I'm particularly interested in how 3D video games can help students learn German. You can find out more about this project on my website and even download a prototype game and instructional materials there. If you ever have any questions about channel content or requests, please write me. And if you ever notice a mistake, please let me know. I'm just one person managing this whole project, so I could use your help. In any case, thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.